are people in this world who move through the shadows, who smile at you, shake your hand, and hide something truly monstrous beneath the surface. Tonight, we talk about one of them. His name was Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Edward Epstein was born in 1953 in Brooklyn, New York. Nothing about his early life suggested what he would become. His father, Seymour, worked as a municipal gardener. His mother, Pauline, was a homemaker who occasionally helped at the local public school. They were a working-class family, humble, quiet. Jeffrey grew up alongside his younger brother, Mark, in an ordinary neighborhood, going to ordinary schools. But there was something about him, even as a child. He wasn't loud. He wasn't the kind of boy who filled a room with his presence. He preferred to watch, to observe, to study the people around him, in silence. Academically, he was extraordinary. He graduated high school at just 16, having skipped 2 full years. By the age of 5, he played piano fluently. His mind absorbed everything around it, like a sponge that never filled. At 16, he enrolled at New York University to study mathematics. He started with enthusiasm, but slowly the ambition faded. He found the classes too slow for him, too ordinary, and so he dropped out. No degree, no credentials, but that would never stop him. In 1974, Jeffrey Epstein walked through the doors of one of New York's most prestigious private schools, the Dalton School, carrying a resume he had fabricated entirely from scratch. It claimed he held a mathematics degree. It was a lie. Within hours, he had convinced the headmaster. Within days, he was teaching mathematics and physics to the children of New York's elite. No degree, no real credentials, just extraordinary manipulation. He was later dismissed from the school under circumstances that were never fully disclosed. Private institutions protect their reputations carefully, but investigations would later suggest that his behavior with certain students had already become troubling. He simply moved on. In 1976, he constructed another false resume and walked into Bear Stearns, one of Wall Street's most powerful investment banks. He entered at the lowest level possible. 4 years later, he was a partner. 4 years, from the very bottom to the inner circle. When his fabricated credentials were eventually discovered, he didn't deny it. He didn't panic. He simply looked his superiors in the eye and told them he knew he was perfect for the job, and he didn't want something as small as a missing piece of paper to stand in his way. They kept him. That is who Jeffrey Epstein was, a man who could convince anyone of anything. He eventually left Bear Stearns under a cloud of fraud accusations and founded his own firm, Epstein and Company, a financial advisory service for the ultra-wealthy. What's strange is that to this day, no one fully understands where his money came from. He lived in one of the most expensive mansions in Manhattan. He owned a private ranch in New Mexico, which he called, of all things, Zorro Ranch. He had a luxury apartment in Paris, an estate in Palm Beach, Florida, and a private island in the British Virgin Islands. The private jets, the staff, the lifestyle of a billionaire. Where did it all come from? One name appears more than any other: Leslie Wexner, the founder of Victoria's Secret, a man of extraordinary wealth who not only used Epstein's financial services, but signed over power of attorney to him, control over his fortune. Many believed Epstein used seduction, manipulation, and leverage to extract that wealth from Wexner. The older man would later claim he had been deceived, that their relationship was purely professional. Perhaps, but there's another theory that has circled Epstein's name for decades, that he worked as an intelligence asset for the United States government, that certain doors were opened for him, that certain charges never stuck. We may never know the full truth of that. To understand what Jeffrey Epstein built, you must understand the woman beside him. Her name was Ghislaine Maxwell, born in France in 1961, raised in London's highest social circles, the youngest of 9 children, the undisputed favourite of her father, Robert Maxwell, one of Britain's most powerful media magnates. Robert Maxwell died in 1991, found floating in the waters near the Canary Islands, from what was ruled a suicide. His daughter never believed that. She insisted his character made it impossible, that someone had killed him. The parallels to what would happen to Jeffrey Epstein decades later are unsettling. Ghislaine was everything Jeffrey was not in public, where he preferred to observe from a distance. She lit up every room she entered. Warm, charming, the kind of person you liked immediately, the kind of person you trusted without quite knowing why. They met sometime in the 1980s. They became lovers, then partners, then something harder to define. She was his confidant, his companion, his secretary, his closest collaborator, and according to dozens of victims, she was also his recruiter. What Epstein built was a pyramid. It began with a simple offer. A girl, often young, often struggling financially, would be approached, sometimes by Ghislaine herself. The offer was straightforward. Come to Jeffrey's home, give him a massage. You'll earn $200 or $300 for an hour of your time. Many accepted. The scene was almost always the same. He would be lying face down, covered with a towel. He would greet them calmly, ask them to start with his feet, and then he would begin to talk. He would ask about their lives, their dreams, their families. Were they studying? Did they want to be an artist? A musician? Did they have younger sisters? And slowly, the conversation would shift, and then something far worse would begin. For those who cooperated, the reward was money and a proposition. Bring me your friends, your classmates, and you will be paid again, simply for making the introduction. The pyramid grew. For those who resisted or threatened to speak, Ghislaine would call, her voice calm, her words precise. She would remind them where they lived, who their family members were, and she would make it quietly, clearly understood, that every dream they had could be taken from them just as easily as it had been offered. It was control through hope and through fear. Of all the places in Epstein's world, the darkest was the island, Little St. James, a small private island in the British Virgin Islands, beautiful on the surface, a place from which there was no easy escape. One survivor, a young woman who was approximately 20 years old at the time, described arriving by private jet, witnessing things during the flight that she could barely process, being taken to the island, understanding quickly that leaving was not simple. She eventually ran to a cliff, and she jumped into the water and swam. She was rescued before she reached safety and brought back. Cameras monitored every inch of the island, every inch. In 2005, the first formal complaint was filed. The stepmother of a girl reported what had happened during a massage appointment at Epstein's Palm Beach estate. The FBI eventually compiled a 53-page federal indictment, detailed, damning, describing acts of unspeakable abuse. In 2008, Jeffrey Epstein pleaded guilty to a single minor charge, soliciting prostitution from an 18-year-old. He was sentenced to 18 months. He served 13, with extraordinary privileges: a private driver, regular departures from the facility, a schedule that bore almost no resemblance to imprisonment. In 2009, he walked free, Miami Herald published an investigation that tore the previous agreement apart. The FBI reopened the case. Epstein was arrested. The immunity deal was nullified. Every victim would be allowed to testify. There was no path out of this one. He was placed in the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York. On July 23rd, 2019, a guard found him on the floor of his cell, bruising around his neck. He had apparently attempted to end his life. He was moved to a suicide watch unit. Glass walls, constant light, no materials that could cause harm. Days later, he was transferred back to a standard observation cell. 2-person occupancy at all times. A guard check every 30 minutes. On August 10th, 2019, at approximately 6:30 in the morning, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead, a bed sheet around his neck. His cellmate had been transferred the night before with no replacement assigned. The guard responsible for the 30-minute checks had fallen asleep. 2 security cameras covering his cell door had both malfunctioned simultaneously. An independent forensic examination noted a broken bone in his neck, inconsistent with hanging by bedsheet. The official ruling was suicide. Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted in late 2021 and sentenced to 65 years in federal prison. The names connected to Epstein, powerful names, famous names, remain largely in the shadows. Some have denied everything, some have gone silent, most have never faced consequences. His cameras recorded everything. Whatever was on those recordings has never been made fully public. Some doors may never open. Sleep well.